Good evening. Welcome to today's session for the book reading of the book The New Path by Swami Kriyananda. Today we will be finishing the chapter, The Divine Test. But as always, before we start, we will start with a prayer and a chant. So sitting up straight, closing our eyes, gazing up at the point between the eyebrows, invoking the presence of God and Gurus here with us. Let us pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Great Masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Bhagwan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, Beloved Gurudev, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, Saints and Sages of all religions, dear friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow at thy feet. O great Masters, be with us here today. Help us to tune in our consciousness with thy divine consciousness. Help us to understand the challenges a disciple can face on the path of self-realization. Help us to tune into thy consciousness to overcome these challenges and reach our goal. Find God. We are thine. Be thou eternally ours. Introduce us to God. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we'll have one chant.
From the depth of slumber as I ascend the spiral stairways of wakefulness, I will whisper, whisper, God, God, God. The food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from thee, I will taste thee and mentally say, God, God, God. Where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on thee. And in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God, God. Boisterous storms of trials shriek, and when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises, loudly chanting, God, God, God. My mind weaves dreams with threads of memory, On that magic clock will I emboss God, God, God. Night in time of deepest sleep, when my peace dreams and calls joy, joy. My joy comes singing evermore. God, God, God. Waking, eating, working, dreaming, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving. My soul will constantly hum, unheard by any.
मैं उससे ना बात करता हूँ और रेज्यूमे
Just for a moment, pausing here. It's beautiful chant. Lyrics written by Paramahansa Yogananda. It's calling out to God, God all the time. Constantly reaching out to Him in everything that we do. Sleeping, waking, dreaming, eating, working, serving. The back of the mind, constantly chanting, God, God, God. Constantly feeling His presence with us. Om Shanti Shanti. So, in the last session, we started this chapter and we saw how having come on the path, it's not like, okay, once we have come on the path, it's all rosy, carpeted path that we will be walking. Swamiji talks about all the difficulties, all the obstacles, all the challenges, the tests that a devotee has to endure. It can be a test by God and gurus to see whether we are really sincere in our journey, and also the challenges from Maya, the delusion that can assail even the ones who are very sincere on the path, who are meditating from time to time. So he himself, with telling the story, his own story, his own experience, he said that these things happen. The whole point is how to just pick yourself up and come back and again try and again try. That is all it is all about. The dedication, the steadfastness, the devotion, the faith. That's what will keep us going, and attunement to the Guru. So even that at times can go up and down. So then it was about how to stay in that aura of Guru, even when you are going through one of those challenges. And he also spoke about that it's not that we want to do it. Delusion is a force. So even if we are realizing, oh my God, I'm getting drawn into something very negative, yet, one is not able to pull oneself off. It also depends upon how much willpower we are ready to put out, because it's a definite momentum, and the moment we give into it, it just picks it up. So there is no end to which we can fall. So very important to meditate, to constantly attune to the Guru, to be in the satsang of other truth seekers. Chanting, Master said, is half the battle. And there were all the other things also that Master had given that help us to stay the path till the end. Like how Jesus said that the first will be last. So Master said that what he meant will be uh, the ones who last. It's not about who came first, but the ones who stay on till the end, who last despite all the obstacles that one faces, will eventually succeed. So, and Swamiji talked about his own challenges, the doubts he started having. He was being pulled into that. He even started doubting Master. Uh, and he was unable to pull himself out of it. So we will first let's listen to him and then discuss further. We read till page 357 where he said that uh, in time I realized one of the reasons Master wanted me to teach others because he was full of doubts and he would overcome. Master knew all about it because he would always say, "Oh, Walter is so confused," but he will get there. So he's saying that Master said that he wanted him to teach because having entertained doubts myself in past lives, I needed to reinforce my growing faith by expressing it outwardly and helping others in their struggle to resolve doubts. So when we are caught in a particular tendency, it's because we are bringing it from God knows which lifetime, maybe 500th lifetime before this, and or 400, we don't know, but it's all there. It's all there in our astral spine. We are carrying these tendency, and that is why we need a guru, a self-realized master who can help us, guide us, and be around. We have to do the hard work ourselves, but he's the one who's guiding this process. So it's very important to stay tuned. So let us now hear Swamiji and then we will.
Where else at Master's place? It was even more heartrending for me to see crowds going to be with Master, while I labored alone, hopelessly, at my incomprehensible task of editing. But Master insisted that I stick to it. "How much have you edited?" he wrote me in a note that Henry brought back one day. "Thorough but fast editing is necessary, or nothing will be done. Time is scant." Henry's presence was a great blessing for me. During the weeks we spent out there together, we became fast friends. Footnote, reviewing that word fast. I am compelled to admit that some other adjective would better serve my meaning, were I able to find it. It has been painful for me in my life to have to accept that no friendship is truly steadfast, except God's and the Guru's in God. During the weeks we spent out there together, we became fast friends, our mutual attunement developing until it often happened that one of us had only to think something for the other to mention it. What rare good fortune, I reflected, to find even one such friend in a lifetime. As it turned out, the other monks didn't get to spend much time with Master either, since their work was out of doors, and he, staying indoors, concentrated deeply on finishing his Gita commentaries. Nor was he indifferent to my welfare. Rather, he tried in various ways to reassure me. But it was his way never to intrude on our free will. to the point where it would mean fighting our important battles for us. That would have deprived us of the opportunity to develop our own strength. And so the weeks passed. In April, Mother and Dad visited Mount Washington. Dad was being posted from Egypt to Bordeaux, France, where eventually he made an important oil discovery at Part2 and ended his career as an appointee to the French Legion of Honor. Master permitted me to go and receive them. "But you must return after 4 days," he wrote me, "after seeing your parents, designated by your real parent, God." Then, referring to his commentaries, he added, "Only 3 chapters left. Soon we will get together." Master received me before I left. Looking at my now flourishing beard, he remarked with a smile, "I can't have you going looking like that." He had me sit down right then and there out of doors, called for a comb and scissors, and proceeded with many gleeful chuckles to trim my beard as he wanted it to look. I have tried ever since to keep the beard more or less that length, except for one period in my life when I shaved it off, thinking that now I looked quite old enough. I then decided, however, that it was for more reasons than my youthful appearance that he'd wanted me to grow it, so I let it grow again. My father, happy as he was to see me, was far from supportive of my new way of life. He shuddered to see my beard, deplored my abandonment of a promising writing career, and altogether rejected my spiritual beliefs. One day he said, if I were to get the opinions of a few doctors on this teaching about energizing the body by willpower, would you accept their verdict? It wasn't as though he were proposing to consult any of the numerous physicians who were already members of our work. Probably he didn't dream such an animal existed. "Dad," I remonstrated, "doctors aren't omniscient." I attended the morning service with Mother and Dad at Hollywood Church that Sunday. The day before, I had asked Reverend Bernard, who was scheduled to speak, "Do you think you might give a really scientific talk to impress my father?" "Sure," he replied confidently. Any correspondence, however, between Bernard's and Dad's understanding of science was purely coincidental. Dad came away from church that day convinced that Bernard had taken complete leave of his senses, a judgment that probably by extension embraced the whole lot of us, including me. It might be conjectured that my parents' visit, coming as it did during my severe trial of faith, made the trial harder than ever for me. In fact, however, that visit helped me to overcome my doubts. For my parents and I, despite our philosophical differences, deeply loved one another. The reality of this underlying bond helped me to see that love is a far better response than reason to that kind of doubt which is quick to condemn but slow to investigate. My parents were pleased in the end to see me happy in my new calling. Reflecting on my confusion and unhappiness during college and after it, Mother wrote to Master a few weeks later to thank him for the good he had done me. During my brief visit to Mount Washington, I found that others of the monks, too, had been passing through inner trials. On my return to 29 Palms, I said to Master, "Sir, Jean is a little discouraged. Someone told him that Ramakrishna said grace is only a sport of gods. He takes this to mean that a person might meditate for years and get nowhere, whereas God might reveal himself to any drunkard if he had a mere notion to." Ramakrishna would never have said that. Master looked almost shocked. That is what happens when people, without realization, try to interpret the saint's teachings. God is no creature of whims. Of course it may look like sport sometimes, to people who can't see the causative influences of past karma. But why would God go against his own law? He responds according to it. Tell Haupt I said this is a serious misunderstanding on his part. I will, sir. I paused. Master, won't you talk with him? He seems to be having a hard time lately. Well, Master answered quietly, Satan is testing the organization. Haupt is not the only one. Is that what the trouble has been? Yes. Sadly, Master continued, quite a few heads will fall. Will it go on for very long, Master? Quite some time. After a pause he went on, It all started when that boy Jan left Encinitas. Then Smith left. Quite a few more heads will roll. Jan, the 9-year-old who had received a vision of Jesus, had left the work several months later with his mother. Reverend Smith had been the minister of our Long Beach chapel. It would seem that in the lives of great world teachers, a sort of house cleaning takes place toward the end of their missions. In this way, their work is assured of being carried on as purely as possible after they leave this earth. Jesus Christ told his disciples, The man who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life. And again, the man who eats my body and drinks my blood shares my life and I share his. He didn't trouble to explain what he meant by those words, or that they had a purely metaphorical significance. It was almost as if he were inviting people to misunderstand him in order to find out who among his disciples were truly in tune with him. The Bible goes on to say, many of his disciples, when they heard him say these things, commented, This is a hard teaching indeed. Who could accept it? Their general reaction is reported next. From that time, many of his disciples withdrew and walked no more with him. Footnote, John 6:54-66. Paramahansa Yogananda explained that Jesus, in speaking of his body and blood, was referring to the omnipresent, eternal spirit with which his consciousness was identified. By body he meant all vibratory creation, the Holy Ghost or Om, which the devotee must absorb into himself, Jesus said, eat, until he feels inwardly identified with it. Christ's blood is the all-pervading Christ consciousness in which, like blood which sustains the physical body, is the true life and sustenance of all creation. The meditating devotee must advance from oneness with Om to oneness with Christ consciousness, and thence to attain oneness with God the Father beyond creation. I asked Master once, what stage must a person have attained to become a true master? He replied, one becomes a master when he attains Christ consciousness. Back to the text. But the closest disciples of Jesus were in tune with him on an intuitive level. Nothing that he said outwardly could disturb the sublime certitude of that inner knowledge. Their intuitive understanding demonstrated their fitness to promulgate his message after he'd left his body. One evening at Master's retreat, we were walking together outdoors, just the two of us, when he remarked, as if out of the blue, very sternly, Apart from St. Len, every man has disappointed me, and you mustn't disappoint me. His concluding words were spoken with great earnestness. I knew that many of his men disciples had not disappointed him spiritually. What then could he have meant? Had his meaning something to do with his frequent statement to me, You have a great work to do, Walter? I hadn't yet understood clearly what that work would be, and my next question, had it something to do with the fact of my being a man? It took me years to understand his admonition that day at 29 Palms, and the reason he had delivered it with such intensity. Men and women, though equally expressions of God, manifest him differently. Thereby they complement one another. In this way they exemplify the dual nature of all manifested existence. Men's energy, Master said, is more naturally outward, women's more inward. He pointed out that this difference, though of course varying with the individual, is evident even in the sex organs. He had been disappointed that the men who had come to him as disciples showed no zeal for spreading his mission. Dr. Lewis often spoke disparagingly of ministers who just get up and blow. Master had had me lecture in the churches, but I always imagined that it must be my bad karma to have to speak in public. I visualized the other disciples, those with good enough karma, as I thought it, sitting at home, meditating. It was nearly 7 years before I came to recognize that people were in fact helped by something I'd said in a sermon or a lecture. One person had been contemplating suicide, but changed his mind after hearing me speak. Another developed faith in God after one of my sermons. I'm afraid it was Dr. Lewis primarily, who by his comments about blowing had dampened my enthusiasm. That, and also the fact that the women disciples, who served Master more closely, and seemed outwardly at least closer to him than most of the men, were not given the task of speaking in public. In fact, however, Master had tuned into my most deep-seated desire to help others as well as myself to find God. Even as I was crossing the country to offer myself as his disciple, 2 longings had been uppermost in me, to find God and to help others to find him. What a wonderful teaching, I thought. I wish everyone in the world could hear, understand, and embrace it. This thought rose powerfully within me, almost as a part of my longing for God. How could I be satisfied even with finding God, as long as my brothers and sisters everywhere lacked that realization? Did I really think of everyone on earth as my brother and sister? Yes, to this extent at least. One of my basic motives for seeking God was the dismaying realization that the depths to which anyone can sink are, potentially, depths which everyone must fear. I, too, could sink that far, not, of course, in my present realities, but in my humanity. I could become a drug addict, a murderer, a raving lunatic. I remembered that period of my life when, as a child, my father had read to me from Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, and how in my feverish delirium afterward I had cried out again and again desperately, "I don't want to be a drunkard, I don't want to be a drunkard." Man's infinite potential for error, as well as for wisdom, unites him in consciousness with all men. Everyone in the world is in the same predicament and shares with all the same need, inner freedom. If I could extricate myself from the universal problem, even to the extent of finding the right path to freedom, I longed to share my discovery with everyone. This basic instinct in me was dampened by the deprecating comments of more than one of my fellow disciples. My first and only real desire was, after all, to find God. Nothing interested me that might obstruct me in my search for him. I certainly didn't want to just get up and blow. One day Master commented to a group of us monks about the number of teachers he'd appointed who had allowed public admiration to go to their heads, to the point, absurd as it seems, of considering themselves as knowledgeable as their own guru. Such, alas, is human nature. It likes to preen itself. Master's women editors also had presumed to correct not only his word flow and grammar, but even his teachings. Hearing him describe this danger to those in the ministry, I said to him, "Sir, that's why I don't want to be a public speaker." He understood that this was an important moment in my life. Speaking gravely and with great emphasis, he lowered his eyes to the floor and averred, "You will never fall because of ego." There was another aspect, however, to his concern over those who taught in his name, or, for that matter, who edited his writings. No one, so far, had shown real enthusiasm for sharing his teachings or his broader mission with others. Everyone seemed more concerned with his or her own spiritual progress. In me, Master had found someone at last who really wanted to reach out to the whole world with the truths he had come to share. I heard many years later that an ex-monk had reported to a friend of mine something he'd heard Master say to a small group. If Walter had come earlier, we would have reached millions. This I now suspect was why he came out onto the stage after my acceptance and announced with obvious satisfaction, "We have a new brother." It was also why he had me stand up in church the first time I heard him speak there, and introduce me to everyone. My work, as he already knew, was to serve as a spearhead for his teachings. He knew from the beginning that my job would be to introduce his message widely everywhere, without adding amendments of my own. Indeed, through the many thousands of lectures I have given in many countries, through the some 91 books so far that I have written, through the over 400 songs and instrumental pieces that have come through me, through his writings that I have edited, through the 7 or 8 communities I have founded so far, and through the many people, perhaps hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions, that I have brought to accept discipleship under him, my job has been to bring not only him but his teachings and mission to the world. Much, of course, remains to be done, but I imagine that few would deny that with Master's grace I have been able to make a fair start at getting his work known in the world. And it all really began with those months out at 29 Palms. In my struggle to edit Master's commentaries on the Gita, and earlier on the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, it turned out that there was enough to correct in the old magazines, even without changing their wording. Most of the mistakes were simply typographical errors, or the brain-children of some editor with a quaint fetish for capitals. But these literary outcasts were so numerous that I could see no practical way of preparing the text for publication without first typing out all the articles afresh, double spacing for surgery. Master, however, must not have realized what very bad shape they were in. When I suggested to him that I type them out, he said it would take too long. When, however, I finally submitted the fruits of my labors to the editorial department, having cluttered the margins with as many as 6 proofreading corrections to a line, it was obvious that my copy would be impossible to work from. Laurie Pratt, the older disciple, to whom Master had given the real responsibility for editing, ordered that my work be thrown away altogether and the whole job typed out, double-spaced, from a fresh set of magazines. Why had he had me do all that hard work so uselessly? Later I understood. He hadn't much longer left to live, and he wanted to indicate his will for the future of his work, and for our own individual future. Thus he had tried in 1925 to start a school for children at Mount Washington, though he surely knew that parents in America would need first to accept his teaching before they'd considered sending their children to his school. He'd tried to start a yoga university, though he must have known that the time had not yet come for such a venture. He'd tried to start a World Brotherhood community at Encinitas, knowing, again surely, that America was not ready for such a step, nor his renunciate disciples ready to accept it. And he tried to get me, at the young age of 23, to edit some of his major writings, certainly knowing that I wasn't ready for the task. All this was to help sow his thoughts in the ether for future fruition. One afternoon at his desert retreat, I overheard Master scolding Miss Taylor for not using my work. "If you gave me $1 million," he cried, "I wouldn't go through what he did to get this job done. Not if you gave me $1 million. As if he'd do anything for mere monetary gain. I smiled, though I was gratified by the concern he expressed. That afternoon, Laurie Pratt happened to meet me outside Master's house. "My," she exclaimed, "that certainly was a lot of work you did." Turning to go indoors, she added offhandedly, as if to the air, "Not that it did any good." Again I smiled, this time wryly. I myself had known it was all useless. Later that day, Master tried to comfort me for her seemingly unfeeling remark. "But, sir," I pleaded, "she's quite right. It wouldn't have been possible for anyone to work from my copy." "You are defending her." Master's expression showed amazement. "But you did good work. All those capitals, why, they'd have made us a laughing-stock." I was touched by his attempt to reassure me. For me, however, the important thing was that I knew now, more deeply than ever before, that I belonged to him, and that the outward ups and downs of the path didn't really matter, so long as I felt his love in my heart. Perhaps, I reflected, he had been keeping me at 29 Palms only to help me face important defects in my own character, and not for the sake of his books at all. At any rate, I knew that my months of agony had matured me. Now I felt nothing but gratitude for them. There was once, the only time ever, that Laurie Pratt, Master, and I were alone together. It was out of doors at his desert retreat. Master told an amusing story from his early days at the school in Ranchi. "I used to be a fast runner," he said. "At the school we somehow acquired several dogs that caused us endless problems. No one could catch them. One day I took a gunny sack and chased after them, grabbing each in turn and putting it into the sack. In that way I managed to catch all the dogs. We then took them far away and succeeded in getting rid of them." I no longer remember Master's exact words on this occasion. In fact, I couldn't really understand properly what he was saying. He told the story with so much gusto and enthusiasm, using broad gestures and panting in pantomime, laughing and with a twinkle in his eyes, that his words became obfuscated. His delight in the story was contagious, however, and I laughed with him delightedly. Laurie, for her part, sat composedly looking into the distance. She seemed mentally quite removed from what Master was saying, untouched by its comedy. Distantly she commented, "Well, well," and then, "Fancy that." Master was obviously directing his story to me. Was he giving me a hint of Laurie's inability to enter into other people's realities, and perhaps her inability also to estimate the validity of those realities if they differed from her own? He must have known that she and I, years later, would have a falling out, which resulted in her total condemnation of me. I wondered at the time, too, did she even have a sense of humor? After I'd recovered from my test in the desert, Master looked at me kindly, then reassured me in front of the other monks. Walter was on his high horse. Now he is coming our way.
Chapter 31, the Bhagavad Gita. A new
Wow. So we were at the point where Swamiji was dealing with his doubts, and Master, having known, he gave him things to do that, I mean, he was not making it easy for him. He was not sitting and explaining to him and telling him like, "Look, Walter, I am self-realized master. How are you doubting?" He didn't do anything like that. He just kept giving him more things to do. We need to understand that. In fact, Dhyanaji always used to say that, whenever, I mean, she never had, in her whole time with Swami Priyananda, She said maximum it would have been some 15 minutes when he would have counseled me. Other times, she said, most of the time, when she was down or something, she would go to him or, try to talk, and he would say, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? He would keep giving more work to her. And she said, with that, there was no time to even, feel badly for yourself. And soon she would realize that she had come out of it. So this is what Master was doing with Swami Priyananda. He realized Swami was going into a that low phase. He took him to 29 Palms. He gave him some work. He gave him to edit his Bhagavad Gita, though again Swamiji was in that low phase, so he didn't understand what exactly he meant when he said edit, work like lightning, but don't change a word. And he used to feel, what can I edit if I don't change a word? But the whole point was, Master was keeping him, and he wasn't talking. He was kept separately, where he started going more in that. So it wasn't like he was keeping him close. He just kept him in his aura. And the whole point was, Swamiji had to work it out himself, right? Being in that vibration and work it out. That was, we still have to do our part. That is why Master gave the formula 25, 25, 50. He said 25 is the devotee's effort for his spiritual progress. 25% the Guru does on behalf of the devotee. And 50% is the grace, God's grace that flows through the Guru. So 75% he's bringing on the table. But we have to do, we have to give our 100% to that 25% that is given to us. So he's saying that, when he was living in that monk's retreat, Master was not meeting him. He was all alone. Master did call other monks, and Swamiji again went into that rut that, oh, they are going to meet him. Whereas no such thing happened. Master was not meeting anyone. He was busy, writing his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. So he wasn't really meeting. But Swamiji was like, going into that loop, saying that, oh, others are spending time, and here he has kept me away. And in that time, he says, I bet, Henry had come, and he says, Henry's presence was a great blessing for me. During the weeks we spent out there together, we became fast friends. And in the, this thing is given, reviewing that word fast, I'm compelled to admit that some other adjective would better serve my meaning where I'm able to find it. It has been painful for me in my life to have to accept that no friendship is truly steadfast except God and Gurus in God. So that is why he said fast. So these, worldly relationships, we do have good relationships, friends, but it is not very steadfast. It's not really, sustaining. So fast, you become friends fast and then you fall off fast also. So, but then, the short period of time they did, when he was especially going through a bad phase, he found that, at least that thing was there with Henry. And later on, he says, I found that other monks didn't get to spend much time with Master because he was busy. And so again, he's saying that Master knew that Walter is going through his, the churning. But he says he was not indifferent to my welfare. Rather, he tried in various ways to reassure me. But it was his way never to intrude on our free will to the point where it would mean fighting our important battles for us. That would deprive us of the opportunity to develop our own strength. Now, this is very important. God, Guru, has given us free will. So, to accept God or reject God, that's only two ways, right? All these lifetimes we have come here, we have, we are still around, we haven't found God, which means that at various times we have rejected him. But God has never imposed God's will on us. We have to open ourselves to their guidance, to God, to love of God, and that's when they will start guiding. So Master said, I can wait. I mean, to one devotee, he said, you called me, so I came. Otherwise, I can wait. And he can wait. He has waited for eons. He can wait for eons. But do we really want that? To go around and round and round, lifetime after lifetime. And here he's saying that he never intruded on our free will to the point where it would mean fighting our important battles for us. Unfortunately, it's a very important lesson for parents today. The biological parents. These days, we find that there's a lot of helicopter parenting that happens. Parents are always hovering around, not giving kids the to go through the challenges, learn on their own from the mistakes. How do you learn otherwise if the parent is always hovering around? And if we remember in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna didn't fight the battle. When Arjun went and told him, I want you on my side, he said, you choose. I mean, do you want me or my whole Narayani Sena who are like me? And they will fight the battle. Where I go, I will not fight. And Duryodhan was more than happy to take Narayani Sena. Arjun said, no, I want you. So Krishna was not fighting his battle. It was a very hard battle. And Arjun had to fight on his own. But when he was tuning himself to Krishna, Krishna was guiding him. Krishna was reassuring him. But the fight, the battle, we have to do our own this thing. That's why Master said, life is a battlefield. We are fighting this war of Kurukshetra day in, day out, moment to moment. But if we have God on our side, if we are constantly tuning into God and Gurus, we will win the fight, right? We will win this battle of life. So, and he's saying that would have deprived. So when Krishna also showed Arjun the Vishwarup, when Arjun was saying, no, I will not fight. They are all my relatives, my guru, my grandfather. How do you expect me to? I am not going to fight. And at that moment, Krishna showed him the Vishwarup, right? And Arjun saw all these, the entire event already happened. All those people who were going to be killed on the battlefield were already being devoured by Krishna. And so Krishna said, this is all already happening. So you want to be, to be my channel or not? That you have to decide. But it's not like you are going to change anything about it. So the battle you have to fight. It's better you fight it out. So in our lifetime also, this is important. God has given us a free will. What do we choose? Do we choose to be on the side of God and Gurus, or do we reject God and Gurus? Right? So when his parents come there, the father is not too impressed that his son has taken, what spirituality, what is this, what is he up to? So Swamiji is like master, he's divine mother, right, to all of us. So he's making sure that he's looking nice when he goes to meet his biological parents. Once when his parents were to come and Master Swamiji said, I'm going to meet my father. He said, you have no father. And he said, no, my biological father. He said, yeah, your father is one. He is God. God is your father. So here again, he's saying that, but you must return in 4 days after seeing your parents, designated by your real parent, God. And he then readies him, cuts his beard and all. And Swamiji says that, after that, I always try to maintain that look and just that much. Except once when I thought he thought that Master asked him to keep a beard because he looks very young, and to look more older, because he used to send him often to even give Kriya initiation and give lectures and all on his behalf. So he thought that probably Master wants me to look more older. But later on, he realized that can't be the reason, just because, he wanted, there must be some reason why Master, because Master never explained this to him. So he says that I then decided, however, that it was for more reasons than my youthful appearance that he had wanted me to grow it. So I let it grow again. So it's, even We need not know everything, the logical reasoning behind everything that the Guru is giving us or asking us to do. Or even Swamiji said, even in a lot of Kriya techniques also, Master never explained too much. Or even when we do our energization exercises, Master never said why he put this particular exercise after that and then the next. Why this particular sequence? When new people come on the path, they do ask like why this and after this. Master never explained. But then he doesn't have to, right? He doesn't need to explain. There is a reason why he has put it. And Swamiji would always say, there were, when Kriya technique, somebody would ask, why do we do it this way? Swamiji would say, Master said so. That's all. Master said so, so we do. We don't need to understand everything. And so Master said so for us that you should do energization exercises every day. Swamiji, even when he was very old, he was 85, could barely stand on his own. Some people would hold him from behind. He would still do, and he needn't, but he would do energization exercises every day because Master told so. So here, Swamiji meets his father, and there's this comedy that's happening because my father is not really impressed with what he's doing. And when the next day they were attending the satsang, which Reverend Bernard was supposed to go, and Swamiji says, talk, because father was a very science guy. He discovered oil and all. So he wanted father to be impressed by, what they were all doing. But it seems like it didn't happen. And father thought that all of them were like, mad. He says, but that he felt Bernard had taken complete leave of his senses. And in that judgment, he says that embraced a whole lot of us, including me. So, but one thing that he says helped me was, it helped him over, though he was going through a lot of the trial and it seemed harder when parents were around. But he says that it kind of helped me to overcome my doubts about Master, about his path, that this is really what he wanted, right? This is for me, though he loved his parents for sure, but the reality of this underlying bond helped me to see that love is a far better response than reason to that kind of doubt, which is quick to condemn but slow to investigate. This is so beautiful, he's saying. All it takes is love. He says, the reality of this underlying bond helped me to see that love is a far better response to anything, to any thing that is pulling us down, to any doubt, than reason. Reason is limiting, right? To that kind of doubt, which is quite quick to condemn, but slow to investigate. So he says that, when they came back, he's saying, I was not the only one who was going through a lot of, doubts and, being pulled down. There were others also who were still, who didn't come to 29 Palms, but staying back at Encinitas. He said, they seem to be Mount Washington. They were also going through their own churning. And where Jean said that, he said that Ramakrishna said, whole trouble is what gurus say, each devotee interprets based on his own experience. As Patanjali said, that is also one of the impediments to self-realization, is that we base, what the guru said, we based on our own consciousness, where we are in our spiritual journey, our own experience, we interpret it. Whereas that is not really what he meant, the master meant. So that is exactly what Jean was going through. He interpreted it saying that when Sri Ramakrishna said, the grace is only a sport of God, it's Leela, right? So he thought that, it doesn't really matter whether you're meditating for years, nothing happens. God will suddenly reveal himself to any drunkard. So it was not so. Master said, that is not what Ramakrishna would have said. He said, this is what happens when people without realization, that means without much depth in their spiritual enlightenment, try to interpret saints' teachings. And that is what is happening around us, right? When we see so much of people fighting that my path is better than your path, and there's this cult that happens. The guru might not have even meant that way, but the way then it, like even what Jesus Christ said versus finally what the church, that's why Swamiji used to say that what you see around now is not Christianity, it is churchianity. It's what the church has interpreted, not really what Jesus Christ had said. So, and that this is in every religion. It's not just what we are talking about. So it's because of the devotees' limited understanding, not having that depth. He says God is no creature of whims. Of course, it might look like sport sometimes to people who can't see the causative influence of past. Why is somebody suffering? Why somebody is living a very good life? Why somebody is so poor? It's because we have caused it. We have put out an energy, and that energy cause and effect. The karma is a universal law, like gravitation, law of gravitation. It is exacting. It is impersonal. It's not like it's being nice to somebody and not so nice to somebody else. It is impersonal. It is not God who is punishing us or who is giving us rewards. His love is unconditional and it's impersonal. We have caused it and it is coming back to us, right? We are punishing ourselves. So he says, but why would God go against his own law? He responds according to it. Tell Opton, I said this is a serious misunderstanding on his part. So, and that is when he said, Master, won't you talk with him? He seems to be having a hard time. And Master said, Satan is testing the organization. Hopt is not the only one. And he said, that is when he said that quite a few heads will fall. Now here, Swamiji also said that, Master said that, Mount Washington is like a hotel. People are coming in and going out. This, when the self-realized Master was living in body, it was still happening. People coming in and going out because they are not in tune, or it wasn't yet their time. Something brought them, some good karma brought them there, but it wasn't strong enough to hold them there. So they just go out. So, so that is why, as Swamiji says, will it go on for a very long time? He says, quite some time. The churning that had started, and it all, and he said that, Swamiji writes that it would seem that in the lives of great world teachers, a sort of house cleaning takes place towards the end of their mission. Like how in Jesus is also when he said, eat my flesh and drink my blood, where it was an allegory, but Swamiji has explained it also here, where Yogananda had explained this. It is an allegory when he was saying, drink my blood. He was talking about the life force. He was talking about, and when he's saying that, the man who eats my body, drinks my blood, shares my life, and I share. Jesus Christ is in that, he's a Christ consciousness, right? So when somebody is in touch with that Christ consciousness, there's a merging, right? You merge in God. So he says, my blood, when he shares my life, I share his life. So he was talking in allegory, but he says he didn't trouble to explain what he meant. Again, like here, Master, or where Ramakrishna Paramahansa said something. Many times they don't bother to explain. Those who are in tune will understand, right? So he says he didn't trouble to explain what he meant. And they also do it. He's saying that, especially towards the end of their life, where this mission has to be carried on, it's kind of a test for the devotees who are there. Are they, despite this, will they still hang around? Do they have that kind of faith? When he said, eat my blood, seems so gory. But despite that, saying that I trust my guru, I have complete faith. I don't understand what he's saying, but I'll still be here. So he's saying that he didn't trouble to explain what he meant by those words, or that they had a purely metaphorical significance. It was almost as if he were inviting people to misunderstand him in order to find out who among his disciples are really in tune with him. So these are tests that the devotee will be, tested. And What do we do at that time? It's like, when the Bible, when he said, Bible says that many of his disciples, when they heard him saying these things, said, this is a hard teaching indeed. Who could accept it? And from that time, many of his disciples withdrew and walked no more with him. And but the closest disciples of Jesus, who were in tune with him on an intuitive level, this is very important. If we use our logical mind, we will find what he said, unacceptable. But when we are constantly tuning into our Guru, then there is that connect. So he's saying nothing that he said outwardly could disturb the sublime certitude of that inner knowledge. Their intuitive understanding demonstrated their fitness to promulgate his message after he had left his body. He asked Peter, when a lot of them were going, he said, will you also go? And Peter said, where will I go, Master? Where will I go? क्या करेंगे? बाहर जाके क्या करेंगे? Where do I go? So that's something we all need to remember. I was listening to Asha Naya Swami once, and she was saying that when you are going through those churning, get into the pack rather than standing outskirts that I should not, I'm going through this, let me stay out and not disturb the energy of the group. She said just get into the center of the pack so that you're just surrounded by your Guru Bhais, you're surrounded in that energy, and that will uplift you. So and here when Master is saying that apart from Saint Lin, Rajrishi Janakananda, every man has disappointed me. You mustn't disappoint me. And he says that he was not talking, saying that other men who were on the monks had disappointing him spiritually. He was saying in a different term. Master knew when he was going to leave his body. So after that, he needed people to carry this forward. And for that, he needed somebody who could share the teachings. And Swamiji, because one, he had doubts on himself, he was very young. So he felt, what am I doing? How can I teach what he's doing? And then Dr. Lewis, who was much older, and he said that everybody just wants to just get up there and blow. So, everybody's talking for, it's an ego thing that they just want to go and talk. And that kind of made Swamiji withdraw more, saying, no, I don't want to do that. So Master kept putting those things to him to go out there, share. But Swamiji was resisting that. He says, it was nearly 7 years before I came to recognize. So Swamiji was saying, Master is there. What is it that I can be sharing? Who am I to even share anything? But after 7 years only, he realized that, something is said in a lecture changed somebody's life. So we need to understand, the more we put ourselves out when we are sharing, when we are serving our Guru, we put ourselves out of the picture and allow Guru to flow through us. We don't know whose life we will be touching. So the more we resist, the more we feel, I am doing it, I am serving, why should I do it? I in ego, serving in ego, or sharing in ego, or even the inferiority complex, who am I to share? Both is ego, right? So the more we put that aside and allow, ask Master to use us as channels, the more we will be able to share more. So here, and here's saying, Master also said there are a lot of them who were, taking it on their ego, that they are sharing, they are doing this. So he said, but so Master was putting him out. Swamiji, we had seen in the previous chapters, starting chapters, when he had not even come on the path, that he always, whatever good he saw, he always wanted to share with others. So he's saying, Master, that was his desire. God and Gurus allow all the desires to manifest. So it's very important to be sure what really you want manifested out there. So he's saying that Master had tuned into my deep-seated desire to help others as well as myself to find God. So he saw that potential in Swamiji. That is why he was always constantly putting him out. And that is why he was saying, you mustn't disappoint me. Which means that, okay, don't just, I want to find God. Don't, even that is, so rather than wanting to Swamiji had that, I want to share it with what I am finding. I want everyone else to feel that ecstasy. I want everyone to feel that peace. I want everyone to understand what Master has brought to this world, what is Kriya Yoga, and become free. So that is why Master saw that, and he wanted him to not pull back from what he wanted. Swamiji often used to say that, I don't know, I'm so done with this towards the end of his life. I'm so done with this. I don't want to come back to this planet again. But then you would say, but if Master wants me to, I'll come. But that is the attitude that we all need to develop. So it is not only about me, but and Master said that you need to help. I don't know exactly number 6 or 7 others for yourself to be free. So so it's about sharing. The more we share, the more we will progress in the path. So Swamiji is writing 6. Yeah, thanks, Ranjana. One of my basic motives of seeking God was the dismaying realization that depths to which anyone can sing are potentially depths which everyone must fear. I too could sing. This is very important. When we find somebody going the wrong way, many people start condemning them, right? Saying, "Oh, he's become like this. He's like this. He's that." Not realizing that it's his karma that is making him, and what guarantee is it that we will not fall there? So not to judge anyone, not to condemn anyone. He says, I too can sing that far. Not, of course, in my present realities, but in my humanity, I could become a drug addict, a murderer, a raving lunatic, anything. So rather than condemning, it's good to pray for them that they are pulled out of this ignorance, this maya that they have been pulled into. And who knows what we have in our past lives. If we are not tempted to do certain wrong things, it's because we have done it before and face the consequences of it. And so it doesn't tempt us anymore. So that doesn't mean that we have always been the most the most beautiful lives all the time. So it's important. That's why the Guru, self-realized master, they never condemn anyone. They change through love, right? They change people through love because they understand what it takes. They have been through it. If they are masters, it has taken here. They have gone through all that and then become the master. So they know it. They understand. And that is why there's so much of compassion for each one of us who is in delusion. So here Swamiji says I remember that period in my life when in childhood, his father told some story. He said, I would say, I don't want to be a drunkard. I don't want to be a drunkard. So he says, man's infinite potential for error as well as for wisdom unites him in consciousness with all men. The moment we realize that if somebody is going through, the pitfalls, or somebody is wise, we are all joined as one. The more we live like that, as one family, then there will be no condemnation of anyone. There will be no fights. There will be no hatred. There will be no, judging anyone. We will all try to help each other out of the rut that we have all fallen. So he says the basic instinct in me was dampened by the deprecating comments by more than one of my disciples. My first and only real desire was, after all, to find God. Nothing interested me that might obstruct me in my search for Him. So I certainly didn't want to just get up and blow. So that was the only thing that was holding him back, because somebody had made such comment. That was a very judgmental comment. Oh, they just want to go up there and blow. So Swamiji just had pulled back. Then finally, Master says, he says that one day Master commented to a group of monks about the number of teachers, and he also said, that who had allowed public admiration to go to their heads, and to the extent that they almost felt that they were as knowledgeable as the Master himself, because they were out there talking. And obviously, people, when they hear people talking inspirational things, they start hero worshipping them, and that can go to their ego. That can affect them. And when Swamiji said, "Sir, that is why I don't want to be a public speaker," Master said, "You will never fall because of ego." So just a few more minutes before we close. So he's saying, so Master here had found someone who wanted to share. He needed somebody after he's gone that this mission continues. So Swamiji was one of them. He found um, who could, and that's why right from starting he was training him to take on that role. And here, later on when we are talking about Laurie Pratt, where she was the editor and she would keep changing things also. Even what Master wrote, sometimes she would changing according, thinking that, oh no, this is so. In that, a lot of interpretation also changes. But she had this attitude about like, I know it all kind of a thing. So Master, he's saying that at various times, Master had planted the seeds. I mean, he's tried to start a yoga school for children, but then the time he had just come to America, the parents themselves were not in tune with this. So he realized that it will take some time. So then he stopped it. So he spoke a lot about brotherhood community. But again, at that time, the devotees were not yet ready. So he's saying that it didn't materialize doesn't mean he was wrong or it was a failure. He was planting the seeds in the ether for one of his devotees, somebody who later on, maybe 10 years, 50 years, 100 years down the line, pick it up and bring it when the time is right for those things to happen, right? So here he's talking about how Master was always encouraging him, and he's saying that he slowly Swamiji came out of it, and he in the end he's talking about Laurie Pratt and Master Swamiji himself, where Master is generally saying something from his childhood. He himself is laughing so much, where hardly one is able to interpret what he's saying. But Swamiji just loved that laughter, the twinkle in his eyes, and he participated. And Laurie Pratt was like, she wasn't so impressed, and she was like, well, fancy that. Here he's saying, Master obviously is directing his story to me. He was also giving me a hint of Laurie's inability to enter into other people's reality. And he's saying he must have known that she and I, years later, would have a falling out, which resulted in her total condemnation of me. I mean, she was one of the main reasons why Swamiji had to, leave SRF. I mean, she just kind of brought it to the fruition, and Master, of course, knew about it. So what he's saying is, what Swamiji is saying is, Master knows everything, and he understands what we are going through, and he also, if for this mission to carry forward, he needs warriors. He needs very strong warriors who have overcome their tests and want to be in tune with him. And tests there will be at all times. But the whole point is, the more we stay in tune. So in this case, when we are talking about Swamiji having had to leave SRF, probably that was also necessary, because being in that organization, he wouldn't have been able to do what he finally went on to do, which is like 400 pieces of music, 150 books, and establishing successful world brotherhood communities globally. That was not something that other people in the leadership of the parent organization wanted to do. So for Masters, those missions to come to fruition, Swamiji had to be taken out. So everything, if we are able to interpret it that way, understand it that everything is the right thing. As long as we are in tune with the Guru, we are able to overcome all the tests and really come up, in a big way, where we much later will realize, oh, that is what Master meant. That is why he did it this way. Like how Anandamoyi Ma had once told, when Swamiji was taken off SRF, and he had written to her, and she said, take this also as Guru Prasad. Swamiji said, at that time, it was very difficult for me to accept it as Guru Prasad. Why would Master do this to me? But he says, on hindsight, much later, many years later, when he had established Ananda and whatever he had got going, he realized, yes, this is also Guru Prasad. So the more we live with that, we will be able to overcome all the divine tests that come our way. So with that, thank you. Thank you for joining. We will
Thank you so much, Jayanti. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jayanti.
Thank you, ma'am.